dozens of Russian paratroopers from the 83rd Guards Brigade shot at each other to receive 3 million rubles in wound compensation for each incident. They aimed so as not to hit vital organs, and Russian federal television channels published stories about the officers' exploits. Channel 1 called them a unique group of snipers. The Kremlin-controlled newspaper Kommersant, citing the Investigative Committee, claims that 35 people were involved in the scam with self-inflicted gunshots. However, journalists from the Current Time television channel found out that there are many more such cases, and self-inflicted gunshots are not always committed for monetary gain. When soldiers shoot themselves, for example, in the arm or leg, it is called a self-inflicted gunshot. Current Time journalists managed to talk to one of these Russian soldiers. He was sent to war with Ukraine against his will. For his safety, we are not naming him or showing his face. I prepared tourniquets. I immediately applied two, above and below the wound. I don't know what will happen. And another guy, also a soldier, applied them. The third one was shooting. He shoots at both of us, and the fourth shoots at the third one. We agree to shoot at the shin, thigh, and arm in the triceps area. Blood gushed out. Hot. Well, the whole boot is covered in blood. You can feel how much of it is coming out. A lot, he said. Inflicting injuries on each other made it possible to avoid taking part in the fighting. I didn't want to be there. We got there by deception, the soldier says. The main thing, according to this former serviceman, is to shoot in such a way that military doctors do not expose you. Otherwise, you will end up in a penal battalion or a tribunal. The shot is fired from a safe distance, but not close enough for the commission to be unable to determine later that it was a self-inflicted gunshot, because technically it is designed in such a way that in addition to the bullet, a stream of powder gases comes out of the barrel. And if the self-inflicted gunshot is made from too close a distance, then in addition to the wound, the bullet entry hole, you also get a tissue burn, says Alexei Alshansky, OSINT analyst to the Farewell to Arms project. Based on whether there is a tissue burn or not, in case of suspicion, experts determine whether the soldier shot himself. It is impossible to calculate how many such unexposed self-shooters in the Russian army were able to avoid participation in combat operations. I often think about all the events, but in the end, I come to the conclusion that in the situation I found myself in, I did everything right. I'm not even talking about the suicide itself, but the entire period of the conflict, the former soldier says. The case of this serviceman of the Russian army is the so-called classic self-inflicted wound, when after being wounded, there is removal from the front, hospital, and then escape from the Russian army, which is the main goal. But non-classic self-inflicted wounds arose immediately after the authorities began to call people into the Russian army on a commercial basis. Moreover, constantly increasing the rates for participation in combat operations as well as payments for injuries received. That is, the main goal of non-classic self-inflicted wounds is to get money. Interesting events are taking place in occupied Donetsk among former comrades who fought for the creation of the so-called DPR and separation from Ukraine. After collaborator Andrei Purgin said in a recent interview with the leader of the DPR, Denis Pushilin, has his own factories for producing drinking water and is making money on the water disaster. The occupation administration decided to strike back, pulling out of information oblivion the well-known provocateur and supporter of Russia, Alexander Kryakov. who accused Purgin, the traitor of Ukraine, Tatiana Montian, and other separatists of destabilizing the situation in the part of the Donetsk captured by Russia. Kryakov recorded a video which drew the attention of blogger Denis Kazansky and said that the aforementioned characters are working for the fugitive ex-president of Ukraine, Viktor Yanukovych, who is allegedly preparing a Maidan to overthrow Pushilin and seize power in Donetsk. The circle of participants: newcomer Vlad Filin, the well-known Denisova, who is already preparing to hold rallies in the DPR. In Moscow on the water issue, Ms. Montian, who has joined them. The whole construction is crowned by the site Anti-Fascist, which belongs to Azarov and Yanukovych's son, who, altogether, as a large group, strongly want to return here and lead everyone, Kryakov said. According to the separatist, the participants in the operation being prepared to overthrow Pushilin are using US aid methods to destabilize the situation. Kryakov claims that events similar to those that took place in Kiev on the eve of the Orange Revolution in 2004 are allegedly currently taking place in Donetsk, and he classifies all Donetsk residents dissatisfied with the lack of water as agents of the Ukrainian special services. Earlier, media cited a comment by Purgin, who admitted that the occupied part of Donetsk region turned out to be the epicenter of grief and distraction, and also told how Pushilin makes money on the lack of water in the region. In his interview, Purgin admitted that about 70% of local residents left the city, and their place was taken by the so-called liberators. According to Purgin, Donetsk has effectively turned into a garbage dump. Waste is not removed for weeks. The streets are filled with a foul odor. And normal water supply has long been an unattainable luxury. At the same time, the current leader of the pseudo-republic, Denis Pushilin, and his entourage not only ignore these problems, but also directly benefit from them. Pushilin owns 6 drinking water bottling plants, which means the lack of a centralized water supply plays into his hands. In essence, residents have to buy water from the same people who are responsible for its shortage. It is significant that Purgin himself, who since 2005 has been advocating for the separation of Donbass from Ukraine and actively participated in the creation of the Republic, today practically admits that the project for which he fought has turned into a disaster. Donetsk has ended up in ruins, deprived of even basic living conditions, and the occupiers and collaborators have turned the existing problems into an instrument for their own gain.